Hello, my favorite quilters. This is Birdie from My Favorite Quilt Store. Back with you on this Nutty quilt, and I'm having so much fun. This is the fun part for me, putting the quilts together. When you start putting your blocks together, I should say, and it starts to look like a quilt. So I use my design wall, and I put my acorns how I wanted them, you know, different colors here and there, because I did not follow the pattern on the front of the pattern. I kind of mixed it all around, but I did do that. I used their layout for the borders because I really liked the way they did the borders. So once you get everything together, you get to start sewing the blocks together. But you have to make sure that your blocks are the right size before you start sewing them together. They're supposed to be 6.5 by 8.5 unfinished. So when you put it in and you sew it all into your quilt, they're 6 by 8. So some of mine were not completely 6 by 8. They were a little short on the sides or whatever. So I get my ruler and I measure them, and if there's anything extra, I can cut that off. But if there's a little area in my blocks, like sometimes I was a little short up here, sometimes I was short on this side or whatever. So I would just put a pin, like I've got my next row sewn together, and like I'm a little shy over here, so I just put some pins in to mark it. I'll take care of that when I put that one on with my border. But you get it all together. The hardest part when you're piecing this is making sure all of your acorns line up vertically. So I use a ruler, and this is not perfect, but I try and match this seam to this seam, this seam to this seam. And so I'll take my little pen, you know, it's the blue, like a chalk-like pen, and in my seam allowance here, like I'll come here and you know, mark it. And so I want this one to sew, and I'm marking it on my sashing that's in between each row. So like right here, I'm going to put a little dot right here in the seam allowance, and I know you can't see that, but it's right here. So when I sew this row to the bottom of this, I want this little dot to match up with this outer seam. And it just keeps things more lined up properly, and that's probably the most difficult thing about all this. Now my quilt is a little bit wider than what the instructions say, and that's just going to be because of the way everybody's different, and no quilt is perfect. So yours might be a little more narrow. I tend to make my seams a tiny bit smaller than 1/4 of an inch sometimes. So I knew mine was going to be just a little bit longer. That's not going to matter. You have plenty of fabric in this kit to make this whole thing come together and look really pretty. So go through and, you know, like I said, square up, make sure every block is as close to 6.5 by 8.5 that you can get. And then if it's shy, when I'm sewing this together, I just put my block, I don't pull my fabric all the way to the edge when I'm piecing it, and you can get rid of all those little imperfections so that when you put it together like this, it looks pretty good. So that's the hard part for this, but it's also fun because you get to see what it's really starting to look like. Okay, so I am using a design wall, and if you're lucky enough to have one, it's really beneficial for this quilt as long as it doesn't fall off the wall. But it gives you a good idea for placement when you're putting, unless you want to go by their colorway. You know, she did, okay, you can make yours look like hers, meaning you can put all your acorns in the same place that she put hers, but I didn't do that with mine. So having the design wall helps you with your color placement when you put this whole thing together. And I just did mine randomly. Like I didn't put this fabric with this fabric. I picked my own because I thought that would be more fun. And then the next thing, once you get the inner part sewn together, is you get to start sewing in these cute little borders. And I had both the top and the top and the bottom borders done on mine, and I'm about 3/4 of the way building one side. So I'll just have the other side, and then when that happens, you get to put the whole top together, and that's when it gets real exciting. So I hope that you're having as much fun with this as I am. And the next time we meet, we'll probably showing you what the completed quilt top looks like. And that'll be sometime in December. So I hope you're having fun just like I am, and we'll see you next month.